Question 1, please.
Thank you, Deputy Speaker. Dean Maguire College was one of 28 schools announced under the Major Capital Works programme in March of 2022. Due to the extremely challenging capital budget, all of these projects were put on hold in April of 2023. In February, I was pleased to announce that 7 of these projects were to proceed immediately with the appointment of integrated consultant teams. Due to ongoing budget constraints and the need to prioritise capital works for special educational needs placements, the remaining projects remain on hold. I will continue to keep these projects, including that for Dean McGurk College, under review. In addition, the Council for Catholic Maintained Schools, as the planning and managing authority for the school, has indicated that it will seek to increase the admissions and enrolment numbers at the college through the development proposal process, and this will be key to informing a future major capital works project.
Declan McAleer for supplementary.
And I thank the Minister for his response. And the Minister will recall at the meeting on the 9th of May, which included himself, representatives of the school, the MP, and myself, and the CCMS, it was CCMS undertook to begin the development proposal to reach a situation where the approved enrolment reflect the actual numbers of pupils, which is 678 this year. Does the Minister have any update on the progress of the development proposal as agreed?
Sure.
Thank you. So in terms of the update for the development proposal, the member has rightly outlined that the approved admissions and enrolment numbers of 80 and then 440 in total. But in terms of the earlier response, CCMS are seeking to increase these numbers. That will be through the development proposal process. And when that works its way through, it will come to me then for a decision to be taken. But in the interim, the school can continue to request additional places on an annual basis through the temporary variation process until that DP is brought forward, and then a decision can be taken.
Supplementary from Jonathan Buckley.
Minister, you will know that school capital investment is crucial not only to local schools but indeed also those local communities. My own constituency in Upper Bann has a large section of schools much needed for this investment, but the Minister will know in particular Portadown College has been of particular interest to me. Is the Minister in a position that he can update me as to progress in relation to that school capital investment?
Minister.
Well, Deputy Speaker, the member and colleagues have had me in Upper Bann on quite a number of occasions, and Portadown College is one of the schools that I was able to visit. It was one of the 7 post-primary schools that I announced could proceed to having an integrated consultancy team appointed in respect of that. So within coming weeks, the appointment of that ICT should take place, and that will then allow the planning for this project to commence.
Owen Tennyson.
Minister, can you provide an update on the Special Schools Extension and Refurbishment Programme which you announced earlier this year?
Well, in terms of the special schools, there's work ongoing around all of the special schools estate, auditing them to identify what capacity issues there are, how do we enhance them, and there has been really good progress coming through in respect of that, but I'll be more than happy to provide a further update in writing to the member where I'll detail how that work is continuing to progress.
Speaker, Minister, earlier this year £150 million in capital spending was withdrawn from integrated schools who had been promised it under the Fresh Start agreement. Now, I welcome the fact that money was allocated to Millennium Primary School. That was able to proceed in my constituency, but has he had any further contact with those schools, and is the department making any plans to make good on the promises that were made to them? Thank you.
Minister.
Well, thank you. I know we're well off the topic of the first question now at this stage of the process, but nevertheless I'll do my best to provide an answer. This is an issue that members have raised in terms of the funding. I moved quickly to secure funding allocations for integrated schools. We moved them into the main capital projects of the department, and we've been able to advance a number of those school projects. So to reassure the member, those schools are being taken forward as part of my main capital project team, and obviously funding for shared education we were able to secure for the facility down in Omagh, where I was able to visit just last week, as we've now moved into contract, and that construction phase will be able to be commencing in due course.
Diane Dodds.
2.
Minister.
Thank you, Deputy Speaker. I am committed to ensuring that young people with statements of special educational needs are supported in their transition from school into adulthood. My officials are working closely with colleagues across the Departments of Economy, Health and Communities as part of the end-to-end review of special educational needs to develop and enhance clear and appropriate pathways for young people transitioning from education into adulthood. Transitions is one of 12 work streams within the end-to-end review, and to further this work, my department and the Department of Health jointly chair a transitions working group which specifically aims to understand the experiences and perceptions of the transitions planning process. The Transitions Working Group includes representation from the Education Authority, the Public Health Authority and officials from the Departments of Communities and Economy.
And Dodds for supplementary.
Thank you, Minister, for your answer. Over the last number of weeks, I've been contacted by a number of parents of young people with special educational needs. They have problems in getting into courses in SRC, they have problems with transport, and courses moved and no one knows what's going on. There may be many different pathways for young people with special educational needs, but do you agree with me that rather than working groups and so on and identifying pathways, that it's the legal entitlement that is the most important thing, ensuring that we are responsive to the needs of young people with special educational needs? And will he work to ensure that that legal entitlement in legislation is brought forward?
Sir.
Speaker, well, the member highlights the issues that have been presented from constituents. Certainly I have met and she has met as well, and I absolutely recognise the concerns of receiving that support as you've came through the education system, of which there is a legal entitlement up to the ages of 19. And then the responsibility legally is for the Department for Economy in terms of further and higher education, and various supports come about through different schemes into the workplace, trying to help people into employment. And I know some projects in Lisburn, like Stepping Stones and others, who do excellent work, and they link in with the Department for the Economy in respect of that. So what is absolutely important is where legal responsibility rests, whether it's in my department up to 19 or in other departments post 19, that transition process should be seamless. It should not require a legal responsibility on my department to make sure that other departments are doing the job that they need to do. What the public expect, particularly children affected and their families, is that all of the departments in this executive collectively make sure that we can help throughout that years up to 25, which I know in other jurisdictions there's a legal right in respect of that up to 25. So I can assure the member I'm very much committed to working with my colleagues, and I've highlighted how we're doing that, so that whenever it comes through those transitioning years, the appropriate support is being provided by those who have responsibility to do that.
Nina McAllister.
His answer so far, and the Minister will recognise that there are many instances in which there have been stakeholders who have taken the Department of Education to court on behalf of parents who do have that legal right to education and who are under age of 18. But will the Minister outline that he will support and put into legislation that right for children up to the age of 25? Can he outline that today?
Minister.
Well, Deputy Speaker, the member rightly highlights how some parents have had to very much robustly challenge the support or lack of it that they receive whenever statements of educational need are provided. Part of the outworkings of the end-to-end review that the Department's taking forward, and I hope to be able to outline some further progress on that, is to try and get to the point where people don't need to receive a legal statement, which then they can go to court and challenge and hold to account those authorities responsible. We should be providing that support without the need for statements to be provided, and that support isn't being provided. That's why people then go down this route of receiving a statement. There are thousands of children who don't have a statement, and we have a responsibility to make sure that we provide for them. So I think it's important that post-19, Legal responsibility sits with the Department for the Economy. I appreciate, and in one respect, I think it's a compliment to the Department of Education that members believe that we are best placed to provide that support to people post-19. But we shouldn't get lost in the debate around Department of Education or Department for Economy. There is legal support that should be being provided by both departments at the appropriate points in which people reach that age. And I want to make sure that the transition process is working properly, and I don't believe that it is working as best as it should.
Linda Dillon.
Apologise to the Minister for not being in here for the start of your answers to this question, but just based on what you've just said around the transition process, I mean there is a real problem there, and that is maybe where the Education Department could do some more work and do better work in terms of, I suppose, giving that information and ensuring that the Economy Department has the information for what they need to have in place, because it is very important. Every single young person has value. They can all do something, and sending them to day centres that are completely inappropriate for those young people is not the answer. They need to have value and they need to feel valued.
Deputy Speaker, I agree entirely with the member, and as part of the end-to-end review into special education, we've identified a number of the key challenges relating to post-school options, and that includes the lack of available places, the imperfect planning, complexities that are around individual needs, and these responses will inform the future direction of the transition planning process to ensure that we are best supporting children and young people's statements of saying. So again, I highlight this is an issue for my department, it's an issue for the Department for the Economy, it's an issue for the Department of Health. So there are three key departments that are involved, and they all need to be moving in the same direction and providing the support at the right stage. It doesn't rest exclusively and entirely on my department, it sits with other departments, and so there's a responsibility for all of us to be getting this right for those who need it most.
Call down Philip Brett.
Speaker.
Minister.
Thank you, Deputy Speaker. I am aware of the continued challenges around underachievement associated with Protestant boys entitled to free school meals. My department is supporting working-class Protestant boys in a variety of different ways. As part of the investment made in schools via the Common Funding Formula, excuse me, £75 million is provided via the Targeting Social Need, which is based on the number of free school meals entitled pupils in a school. This significant investment provides for literacy and numeracy support across all key stages and addresses complex and challenging needs. FSME boys are one of a number of targeted groups that are benefiting from this substantial investment. In North Belfast, the full service programme involving both model post-primary schools has been operating since 2006 and is an integral part of how these two schools support their learners from Year 8 onwards. The work involves support at transition from Year 7 to Year 8, support for attendance, emotional health and well-being, parental engagement, revision classes and much more. Other examples of support include the actions within the A Fair Start report. These actions include the Horizons programme, which is a 2-year developmental youth leadership programme for boys and girls. To date, over 400 young people have engaged and completed vocational development through the Horizons programme. The Extended Schools programme is continuing to support disadvantaged pupils both before and after school, and I have recently announced that funding this year will continue at the same level as last year at £8.1 million. More recently, my announcement about the RAISE programme in May this year is focused on raising achievement and addressing educational disadvantage. Shared Island funding of £20 million over 2 years is enabling this work to continue at pace across 15 areas. The engagement process involving all stakeholders in each locality will begin this autumn.
Philip Brett for supplementary.
Mr Deputy Speaker, and can I thank the Minister for an update on his ongoing work on this issue. Does the Minister agree with me that vital to tackling underachievement is the leadership role that our teachers and principals play within our schools? And I know that the Minister will be meeting with the North Belfast Principals Forum next week to discuss the issues they face, but also the vital work that our non-teaching staff do. And that's why it was vital that the Minister was able to secure a proper pay settlement for our non-teaching staff.
Minister.
Thank you, Deputy Speaker. Can I thank the member for those comments in terms of the successful negotiation that settled the pay dispute for our support staff, because he rightly acknowledges the critical work that they do, and they are invaluable within our schools and right across our education system. And it's a result of the work that we were able to take forward in this department, supported by executive colleagues, that a fair settlement has been reached, which will lead to a significant pay rise for all of our support staff, and then a lump sum payment of £2,550 for full-time equivalents in April of next year. He highlights the issue about the leadership of our principals, and I see that now in the countless schools that I have visited, not least in the member's own constituency, where he's had me out meeting a number of different schools, and they do incredible work. It's my job as the Minister of Education to support them, and I will continue to champion their needs around the executive table.
Pat Sheehan.
The Minister has rightly identified educational underachievement as a major issue, and he mentioned in his answer there the RAISE programme. However, there seems to be an anomaly in the RAISE programme insofar as some of the big grammar schools, the well-known grammar schools in the leafy suburbs, can access this funding, but Bunskull and Clevagive in Ballymurphy, Gaelskull and Namona in Turf Lodge, and John the Baptist in the middle of Andersonstown cannot access this funding. Would the Minister care to comment on that anomaly?
Sure.
Well, I'll take away the schools that he's highlighted and look into the issue. Obviously, we have 15 localities across Northern Ireland that are taking part in this project. I think it is a really good opportunity for not just Belfast, of which there is significant support in Belfast, but for every part of Northern Ireland to be benefiting from this scheme. And I would hope that we'll be in a position to formally launch the programme within the next number of weeks. I look forward to doing that, and the work to set up the infrastructure around these different working groups are being established. A number of appointments have already been made, and we will get on with taking this forward, because we do need to hit the ground running in respect of this, because there is funding that is available to us. But of course, on the particular issues that the member has raised, I'll come back to him in writing about that.
Sean Mulholland.
Answer so far, Minister. You referenced a fair start in some of the recommendations held within that portfolio, but I'm wondering, there was a targeted developmental programme for 2-year-olds at risk of educational outcomes, poor educational outcomes, and I'm just wondering, does the Minister intend to bring that forward as part of the early education and childcare investment?
Sure.
Well, can I thank the member for raising that issue, because obviously the executive did agree the £25 million for early years education. We have been able to roll out the Northern Ireland Childcare Subsidy, and that has been an excellent initiative where we are now already providing support to those hard-working families. But I want to take forward the wider work of developing that comprehensive strategy, looking at from ages 0 and what support can be provided. So we are collecting data and information that will inform that longer term strategy. So of course that is one of the areas that I want to see support, but I am delighted that we have been able to stand up a scheme and to provide that critical support to those hard-working families.
Lord Elliott.
Sir, just wondering, he mentioned a number of projects and programmes that are underway, and I'm wondering, are there targets built in within those projects and programmes, and if so, how is it going at the moment to meet those targets?
Minister.
Well, obviously in respect, Deputy Speaker, to the RAISE programme as one of these areas, we will want to measure the interventions so that they're effective. There'll be a role for the inspectorate to do that. So as we stand up these programmes and develop them, then we will need to assess them. So in identifying areas, the key component and the criteria used was educational disadvantage and outcomes, and that was the basis upon which then areas were selected to take those forward. So we're always measuring in terms of the output. We're looking at academic achievement in schools, and that is information that we are able then to look at. So I am keen that we can provide greater assessment levels, not just on qualifications and results, but also when it comes to teaching that's taking place in our schools. We need to be getting back to a place where we're able to assess that and provide that support to our teaching profession for that continued professional development.
Carol.
agree with me that economic class is the determinant factor rather than religion, whether young people are regarded as a failure or not. The segregated education system hasn't helped either, and budget after budget after budget cuts has made working class people of all stripes haven't had the education system that they deserve, despite the best efforts of people working in education.
Minister.
Well, Deputy Speaker, there are many factors, and social disadvantage is one of them, but I would say to the member there's indisputable evidence that Protestant working class communities are more educationally disadvantaged than any other community, and therefore the member would be wrong to infer that somehow there isn't an issue when it comes to community background, because there is, and that's why we need to make the appropriate intervention. But those interventions will take place in all communities. And it's important that when we get these schemes in terms of the RAISE programme up and running, it will benefit everybody in Northern Ireland.
Sinead McLaughlin.
Thank you, Deputy Speaker. The curriculum provides opportunities to educate young people to develop healthy relationships. Pupils have the opportunity to explore their management of a range of feelings and emotions and those of others, initiating, developing and sustaining mutually satisfying relationships, explore the qualities of a loving, respectful relationship and develop coping strategies to deal with challenging relationship scenarios. The Council for the Curriculum Examinations and Assessment RSE Hub ensures that schools have access to a range of up-to-date relevant resources. Teachers can download guidance documents and existing resources, as well as new RSE resources that SIA has developed to help teachers address sensitive issues with their pupils. The resources provide content that can be used or built upon and are designed to offer schools flexibility in their approach to the delivery of RSE. This approach is intended to enable all schools to deliver effective programmes in line with the particular ethos and RSE policy of the school, and to ensure that the wide-ranging needs of our young people are met. Schools are, of course, free to use materials from other sources, and some schools have developed in-house resources together with pupils. The Department would encourage schools to consider this model, provided they are satisfied that the materials support teaching of the minimum content. Beyond that, the flexibility in our curriculum empowers schools to tailor their approach to teaching and the use of resources to meet the needs of their pupils.
Sinead McLaughlin for supplementary.
Thank you, Minister. The Strategic Framework for Ending Violence Against Women and Girls was published yesterday and was very much welcome. Your department has a key role to play in the prevention pillar, in educating our young people on healthy relationships and comprehensive sexual education. How much money are you putting in your budget to align to ending violence against women and girls?
Well, Deputy Speaker, can I thank the member for raising that, because this was an executive policy and strategy that I was pleased to see come through and I supported, and particularly the component part that relates to education, because there is a responsibility across many different aspects of our society to engage on this issue, and certainly I will ensure that my department engages in it. So as we welcome the approval of the strategic framework, obviously then there's a need to take forward the action plan. It does bring into sharp focus my department's responsibilities, and we will be considering how the curriculum can support the wider strategy, because schools do have an important role to play in addressing these particular issues. So my department is establishing an oversight group with key partners to respond to the Year 1 action plan, and we'll also engage with the Givan Review implementation group in developing the strategy in respect of domestic and sexual violence. So of course, as we do that, it'll be important that resources align as part of that work.
Stephen Dunn.
Thank you, Mr. Deputy Speaker. Agree with me that schools are in fact best placed to determine how RSE, relationship and sexuality education, are best placed to determine how it is taught in schools rather than through a standard curriculum.
Sure.
Well, Deputy Speaker, can I thank the member for that question, because RSE is a compulsory element of the curriculum, and in post-primary schools it is covered under the personal development aspect of learning for life and work. But the member does highlight that there's no evidence to suggest a one-size-fits-all approach delivers a more effective curriculum. That's why we have flexibility in our curriculum so that schools can reflect the issues that are current and which their pupils will want to engage with. And RSE helps children and young people to acquire the age-appropriate knowledge, the skills, developing attitudes, beliefs and values. And the member rightly highlights that it is within the RSE policy developed by the school, and the school can discuss those issues in a way that reflects the ethos of that school.
Cathy Mason.
During our recent committee meeting, the Education Authority stated that they provide very little support to Board of Governors when it comes to designing their schools' RSE policy, which of course can be difficult. Does the Minister think that this is acceptable, and what support will the Department provide?
Well, obviously, as schools develop their proposals and policies in this area, I've highlighted a number of ways in which they can do that. There is guidance provided by EA, there's guidance provided by my department, and I intend to update that guidance. And also there is material available from SIA. So the principal of the school should be capable of navigating this area and making sure that they are teaching the subject, including the minimum requirements that are set out in the curriculum, and boards of governors very much should be able to do that in conjunction with their principal, but also engaging and listening to the pupils so that as it is delivered, that it reflects the issues that those pupils want to be able to discuss.
Butler.
Thank the Minister for his answers. Can the Minister outline what steps he is taking to ensure that students and pupils with a learning disability or physical disability will receive the same level of support and content in regard to curricula and other matters of support to develop healthy and respectful relationships?
Minister.
Well, Deputy Speaker, I certainly wouldn't make any differential treatment irrespective of the type of school. So whether it's a special school or for those who have additional educational needs within mainstream education, they should all be receiving the appropriate support. And again, the minimum curriculum content is an entitlement, and therefore I wouldn't expect there to be a differential in approach when it comes to these issues.
Call Mark Durkin.
Question number 5.
Minister.
My department is in daily contact with the Education Authority through the school's admissions process to ensure that all parents nominate a school for their child and places are available for these children. Fewer than 5 preschool target age children whose parents fully engaged with the admissions process have not yet secured a place. Sufficient funded places remain available though for these children. No child whose parents applied to P1 remains to secure a place, whilst there are 9 children who applied to Year 8 remaining to secure a place. Parents of these children were advised at the end of the admissions process in May how they could nominate further preferences, and they were directed to a list of schools with places available. The EA has written to these parents numerous times in an attempt to seek further preferences, and staff have contacted the parents by telephone to offer advice and guidance. Given that these parents have still not nominated alternative preferences, their cases have now been referred to the Education Welfare Service, which will engage with the families and pursue any further action that might be appropriate. Finally, in terms of children with a statement of special educational needs, the SEN Placements Task Force Group, chaired by the Chief Executive of the Education Authority, meets weekly to discuss progress. My department is represented on the task force group, including senior officials from Inclusion and Capital. The Education and Training Inspectorate also attends. In addition, the Director for Inclusion attends a weekly update meeting with the EA's Director of Children and Young People's Services. 6 children with a statement of special educational need remain to secure a place. However, I can update the House that I am confident that we will be in a position to confirm those places very soon.
Mark Durkin for quick supplementary with less than 1 minute.
Thank the Minister for his answer. Is work already underway to avoid a repeat of this situation that has caused huge stress, trauma even, to some of the most vulnerable members of our society, next year, these children don't just fall out of the sky in May or in August, yet year after year this problem becomes even more pronounced.
Sure.
Well, Deputy Speaker, what I can say to the member that whenever I came into office, I said back in March that there was a need to create an additional estimated 1,000 specialist education places for this academic year. I immediately got to work in resolving these issues and providing clear leadership in respect of this by establishing a task force. And so I can confirm that there has been a total of 183 new specialist provision classes. They have been stood up for this academic year. That has created more than 1,450 new places for children with special educational needs. This includes both special schools and specialist provision in mainstream schools. So, Deputy Speaker, there has been an absolute prioritisation to invest through tens of millions of pounds, which I have not received adequate funding for from the Department of Finance, but I have prioritised it within my capital budget. We have put the processes in place and created those 1,450 additional places. But the member is right. This is anticipated to continue year on year for quite a number of years. So I've already reconfigured the work of the task force so that they're starting now, not waiting for a number of months, so that we don't have a repetition. But what I would say to the House, we need to get the appropriate support for new capital, because we have flexed what is there in terms of spare capacity in schools. So we need to develop new infrastructure. That will require additional investment to do that if we are to avoid this problem next year.
Members, that ends the period for listed questions. We now move to 15 minutes of topical questions, and I call Matthew O'Toole.
Speaker, Minister, notwithstanding some of the commentary around magnetic pouches, I welcome the fact that you are looking at the issue of phones in schools. Lots of parents are concerned about this. So you have rolled out what I take it will be ultimately uniform guidance for schools in Northern Ireland. But can I ask how you square rolling out uniform guidance for schools in Northern Ireland on phone usage, but you say that when it comes to RSE, relationship and sexual education, that it should be left up to individual schools?
Minister.
Speaker, the member isn't comparing like with like. One relates to curriculum. But I do appreciate and thank the member for his support and that of his colleagues for the initiative in terms of mobile phones. A very clear evidence base has been established around the detrimental harm that mobile phone technology causes and the distraction that it causes within schools. And so this is an evidence-based policy. In terms of that, it highlights in guidance a number of options by way that schools can implement now the clear position that the department takes, that mobile phones should not be used when you go into school until you leave school in a post-primary setting, and should not come into school at all in primary. I can assure the member that this initiative has been overwhelmingly welcomed by those in the teaching profession. The number of school principals who have contacted me, including to pilot the scheme in members' constituencies, some of who maybe haven't been that supportive, want to come forward and actually be part of the piloting of a strategy to inhibit these devices. So this is the right thing to do, and schools have my support in taking a very robust approach when it comes to the use or inappropriate use of mobile phone technology in schools.
Supplementary from Matthew O'Toole.
Deputy Speaker, Minister, I appreciate the answer, and I'm glad you're taking action in this area, albeit that you didn't quite touch on the contradiction between those two policies. But I do want to just ask a related question in relation to the programme for government. You talked earlier on about the importance of tackling educational underachievement. You specifically mentioned working class Protestant boys. Can I ask why there isn't a specific target or intervention in relation to educational underachievement in the programme for government?
Minister.
Obviously, the draft programme for government highlights a number of key high-level objectives, and education does feature in that, particularly children with special educational needs. And now is a welcome time and opportune time for the public to have their say on that draft programme for government. But what I would say to members, I didn't need a programme for government or a draft one to get on with the job of delivering new capital programmes for special schools, the mobile phone policy that I've implemented, resolving teachers' pay, and taking forward a huge range of initiatives, including the childcare strategy, which I stood up and have now been able to put money into the pockets of hard-working families. I didn't need a programme for government to do that. I would welcome other ministers getting on with the job of delivering in their departments if they were able to do it as well as I've been able to do it with the support of my colleagues.
Maurice Bradley.
Mr Deputy Speaker, and I thank the Minister for his answers. Minister, can I ask what you're doing to improve the support for control schools?
Minister.
Well, can I thank the member for the question in terms of the controlled schools? This has been an issue which I have felt for a number of years, but having taken up this role, I've become acutely aware of. And I do regret that I believe in many respects the Education Authority has failed controlled schools. As a result of the structures that exist, they have become the poor relations within education, and that needs to change. They need equitable, effective support. I pay tribute to the work that the Controlled Schools Support Council has provided with limited resources and with no statutory powers. The recent independent review of education report highlighted the complicated systems for school management, which are in particular suboptimal for the controlled sector, and proposed that sectors should be supported with greater consistency and equity. I am committed to working collaboratively with schools, the Education Authority and the Controlled Schools Support Council to identify immediate solutions to provide the sector with effective and equitable support and management in both the short and long term. I can advise the House that I have commissioned a task force to progress this work. This will be chaired by Mark Baker, the Chief Executive of the CSSC, and include senior representation from my department and the Education Authority. It will also engage with representatives from controlled schools as part of this work.
Mr Bradley.
Thank you, Minister. I couldn't agree more with your statement. But what is the expected timeline for decisions concerning controlled schools? Is there a timeline that the Minister is working to, or his department?
Thank you. The task force will develop a proposed model for controlled schools support, including a dedicated body to include managing authority responsibility. For the shorter term, it will also identify key performance issues and required improvements for controlled schools within the controlled model. The task force has been asked to report back to me by December of this year. So, Deputy Speaker, this is an issue that I expect to have the report before the end of the year, so that we can establish the next stage of this process in creating a managing authority for the controlled schools. That will ensure equitable treatment. Where other schools have got their own managing authorities, the controlled sector does not, and we need to change that inequality.
Michelle Guy.
Thank you, Deputy Speaker, and thank you, Minister, for the answers so far. Can the Minister provide his assessment of nursing provision in our special schools across Northern Ireland?
Sure.
Thank you, Deputy Speaker, and can I welcome the member to the Assembly. I haven't had an opportunity to do that, so you're very welcome, and I look forward to working with you, not just as a Lagan Valley constituent, but obviously with education as a key interest of yours. The member rightly raises the issue around the support from other allied health professionals, including nurses, for those special schools. And it is a concern of mine whenever I've been out with special schools that we've seen services withdrawn, because I've always been of a view that the best place to support the medical needs of those children and young people is in the setting where they already are. That reduces travel, inconvenience, and I want to see better support taking place in our special schools. Rather than having a withdrawal of services, I would want to see an enhancement of the medical services being brought into our special schools.
Okay.
Thank you, Minister. I'm reassured by your answer that you are understand the need for this provision within the schools. Is the Minister aware that the South Eastern Trust intends to withdraw nursing support from special schools within its catchment area, and would the Minister agree to an urgent meeting with principals of schools impacted by that, with myself and my colleague Nick Mackleson, to discuss that decision by the Trust with them?
Sure.
Deputy Speaker, I will be more than not just happy but very much determined that I would take that meeting. I will also undertake to formally raise this with the Minister for Health, because it is important that there is the support being provided in our special schools, and so I've highlighted my concern about a withdrawal of services. I will engage with the principals involved in this and to enable me to make clear representation to the Department of Health so that this provision is supported rather than withdrawn.
Stephen Dunn.
The Minister set out the latest position with regard to his capital budget going forward.
Well, Deputy Speaker, in terms of the capital budget, the opening provision that the Department received was £254 million for this year, including £20 million of earmarked funding for the Strual Shared Education Campus. As part of the June monitoring, my department made a bid totalling £114 million for high priority requirements, which were not funded by the initial capital budget allocation. In that monitoring round, an additional £15 million was allocated to meet SEN and statutory minor works requirements. My department continues to face significant capital pressures, and difficult decisions will continue to be required around prioritisation. I will continue to bid for additional capital budget to provide additional much-needed funding across many of the department's capital programmes, including the ability to release further much-needed major works and school enhancement projects to construction, ICT programmes, providing end-user devices for schools across Northern Ireland, which would leave many without the computers needed to deliver the curriculum, but particularly to our most vulnerable students, and a range of other key programmes such as bus replacement, land purchases, youth capital provision, and a range of other smaller projects.
Done.
Thank you, Mr Deputy Speaker, and thank the Minister for his answer and indeed his ongoing efforts to secure the investment that education really needs right across our country. Could the Minister update me, please, in relation to the new school build at Crawfordsburn Primary School?
Minister.
Well, Deputy Speaker, the member had me visit the school very early on in taking up office, and I am pleased to confirm that since my announcement in May, the technical designs for the major works project for Crawfordsburn Primary School have been approved by my department, and construction procurement is now ongoing. The project will provide a new school building on the existing and extended site at an estimated total investment of £7.3 million.
Cheryl Brownlee.
Thank you, Mr Deputy Speaker, and thank you to the Minister for his answers so far. Could the Minister detail some of the implications of the Government's plan to introduce VAT on private schools in Northern Ireland?
Sure.
Well, thank you, Deputy Speaker. I have significant concerns about the wording of the draft legislation, which will capture all schools, whether private or not, that charge a fee. In Northern Ireland, this will include 21 grant-aided grammar schools which charge capital, boarding or preparatory prep department fees. And whilst grammar schools in Northern Ireland are grant-aided for their day-to-day running costs, they are likely to be treated by this Labour government as private schools by HMRC for VAT purposes if they charge fees. Impacted schools will be compelled to register for VAT and to charge VAT on their fees. So my officials and I have been engaging with the HM Treasury in respect of this issue to highlight our concerns around the draft legislation, and we will continue to make representations on behalf of schools.
Brownlee.
Thank you, and thank you to the Minister for his answer. Has the Minister made any assessment as to what the implications of this additional burden will have on the affected schools in Northern Ireland?
Well, Deputy Speaker, undoubtedly it will have a significant increase in cost to those families whose children will be impacted by this decision. It also may have an impact on the public purse, because there is evidence that shows where private schools, of which there are a number, but also within preps, there has been reductions in the number of preps in Northern Ireland, and where the private fee-paying parent withdraws their children from those establishments, it is the public sector and the taxpayer who then has to make sure that there is provision for those children and young people. So there will be implications for this, but again, I assure the member I am making representation to the Labour government about this particular issue, but I am very concerned about the travel of direction, and to date our representations are not being received effectively by London, and so I would encourage all members where they can raise these issues to join me in making the case for those schools that will be negatively impacted by this change.
Call Lord Elliott for a quick question. We're almost out of time. Thank you.
Thank you. Deputy Speaker, just quickly to ask the Minister for an update on the new build Enniskillen Royal Grammar School proposals.
Well, Deputy Speaker, I know it is one of the schools in terms of subject to funding, and that's always an issue around getting the appropriate capital. So I continue to make the case, as I outlined earlier, for increased capital resources to be made available to my department, and then I will be able to provide more positive responses to those members who are campaigning on this particular issue. But can I take this opportunity to congratulate the member on his elevation to the House of Lords. Very much deserved, and I commend him as he takes on that particular role as well.
Okay, members, time is up. Members, order members.